Welcome back to another comic book retrospective. Today we're talking about Crisis on Earth Prime. We're going to be crossing over from the Justice League of America into All-Star Squadron. And of course, I've got the retro crew back together. We got award-winning comic book editor, writer, Joe Corello. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Also, we have the voice of the voiceless, the man so cool they call him the Breed. He's got so many comics, we call him the comic book hoarder. Eric Breed, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
You're a little bit older than Joseph and myself, and this is a very convoluted story, sir. Were you able to keep up?
I'm sorry. Speak up. What? It got no less complicated in the 40 years since I read it originally.
This was recommended or requested by a viewer, and I want to say thank you very much, because this is, I'm going to be honest, this thing is fantastic, but that does not make it any less confusing, because you're literally jumping between like three different Earths on three time periods with three different teams, and they start kind of moving around together. It's a lot of fun. It was very difficult to keep together, but this goes from Justice League of America 207 to 209, and then All-Star Squadron 14 through 15, released in October to December 1982. On Justice League, we're going to have Gerry Conway and Don Heck. On All-Star Squadron, we're going to have Roy Thomas and Adrian Gonzalez. Let me lay out these heroes for you, Breen. On the Justice League of America, they're not always there, but these are the heroes that we do see at least once. Aquaman, Batman, Firestorm, Hawkman, Superman, Zatanna, Elongated Man, Flash, Green Arrow, Red Tornado, Wonder Woman. For the Justice Society of America, we've got Dr. Fate, Green Lantern, Alan Scott, Huntress, Power Girl, and Starman. For the All-Star Squadron, we've got Commander Steel, Firebrand, Johnny Quick, Liberty Bell, Robot Man, and Shining Knight. And for the Crime Syndicate, so we do have some villains here. We got Johnny Quick, Owlman, Power Ring, Superwoman, and Ultraman, obviously from Earth 3. This was really difficult to keep these heroes together. It's just so much stuff going on. This is a very lively comic book, Breed.
It is. Fortunately, a couple of the ones you mentioned are only around at the very end. So it takes it down from like 26 people to keep track of to 20, 21.
Yeah, it's about 20. Five members really from each team that are through the full story.
Yeah.
And a couple of side villains thrown in just in case you had gotten the rest of them committed to memory.
And Joe, this plays on a lot of historical events where things start being unraveled and changed. And certainly we've seen this in fiction. We even get appearances from Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and more.
Yeah, it's it feels like Gerry Conway, he did the Superman versus Wonder Woman, which we did a retro on that you can go watch. And it was like he did that and was like, what if this was way more complicated,
way bigger,
and let's take it and what if there's like Roosevelt, but he's on another Earth, and there's all sorts of stuff. We do get a little bit more Roosevelt in the comics. So if you enjoyed the Superman versus Wonder Woman and was like, Gerry Conway writes the hell out of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I need more of that, you're welcome.
Absolutely. So let's do this real quick, because there is a lot of comic book story to get through. What's going on, at this point in time? We're talking about October, December 1982. Good time to be a comic reader.
Yeah, no, this is it's a great time. It's as I'm sure many of you put the pieces together. This is during the Jim Shooter era of Marvel. So an interesting character gets created the first month, October of this story over at Marvel. Monica Rambeau premieres in Amazing Spider-Man Annual 16, and we're at Uncanny X-Men's doing well. We're at the point where Dave Cockrum's come back because Burns left and is doing he's still on Fantastic Four. Dr. Doom is taking back Latveria, because remember when we did that retro and they overthrew Doom? Well, that went out the window, guys. Sorry about that. It took a few years, but he's back. And it turns out some of those people really genuinely missed him. So there's a lot of stuff like that going over at Marvel. And then you go to DC, and Gerry Conway is writing every other book because he's doing Justice League. He's doing, Batman, Detective, Firestorm. You got Roy Thomas on Wonder Woman, who's also doing All-Star Squadron at the time. But on Wonder Woman, I think Gene Colan's on Wonder Woman at this point. It's nice seeing Roy Thomas being active at DC at this time, and people like Gene Colan and Don Heck getting work over at DC. I think we've mentioned this before. I at least have mentioned it before. Don Heck gets a bad rap too often of kind of being like glossed over because he was the guy that wasn't like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko at the dawn of the Marvel Age of Comics.
The other artist.
Yeah, kind of like Ross Andrew gets the short end of the stick as a Spider-Man artist, even though he's very good. It's like, that's great that you're very good, but you just followed up Ditko, Romita Sr., and Gil Kane. So it's tough. But yeah, so it's good seeing all that stuff going on. We are, clipping away. We're still a year from, Simonson on Thor. But, we got, was it Wolverine is just getting his own series at this point. The mini series already happened. He's getting his ongoing there. Frank Miller's still on Daredevil. So it's a pretty Bill Mantlo and Sal Buscema are on Hulk. It's pretty great. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on.
So, Breen, I do want to say this very quickly. There's a hero in here that I really like, and I can't believe they don't use him more right now. I think Firestorm's really dope. It's like a really interesting, unique character. There's not many other heroes out there that are like the duality of two personalities kind of coming together and having to work together. Why don't they use Firestorm more? Such a good character.
Well, they've tried. The series that had just started when this came out, by at some point in that series, they did away with the Ronnie Raymond part of it, and he merged with a Russian and changed his entire look. And then they brought him back, and then in the mid 2000s they replaced him with Jason Roush. So it's kind of one of those where it's one of those characters that has a small but loyal fan base, but not enough to where to prevent him from being constantly tweaked. Yeah. And now it's just, at this point, I'm not sure. Is anybody even using Firestorm now?
No. He's a cool character. So
yeah,
that's
Hal
disappointing.
Jordan. Hal Jordan also has an ongoing at this point. It's crazy.
No way. All right, Joe. And the other thing I know you wanted to mention before we kind of really get in here, I know you wanted to point it out, was the fantastic covers that come on all of these comic books. Specifically, there's a lot of really good George Pérez covers that you're going to be getting on these comic books.
This is one of my favorites from the whole thing is 207 with the crime syndicate attacking the Legion, not the Legion, the League. And, I probably said that because there's so many characters here. And usually
they're like watching the battle.
Yeah, but you get George Pérez, you get Joe Kubert doing the covers. You're
not going to get better than that.
No, you're not really. I mean, and it's interesting because Joe Kubert is he's been around the block a little bit at this point. He was a veteran of the industry then, and you get George Pérez, who's a hot shot up and comer on one of the hottest books in town. So it's a nice little balance there.
Yeah, it's always nice to see Kubert doing covers or doing superheroes other than Hawkman, because that's what the superhero is best known for. Because mostly you know him from war comics.
Yeah, for sure.
We are going to try and do a retrospective of Hawkman specifically with Kubert in the future, because obviously we haven't done any comics with him other than these here with the covers. But let's get into this because we got a lot to get through. Justice League of America, number 207, Gerry Conway, Don Heck. On Earth 2, Dr. Fate, Green Lantern, Huntress, Power Girl, and Starman. The Justice Society of America prepare to teleport to Earth 1. And Earth 3's crime syndicate actually arrives because something has gone haywire at the Justice League headquarters. They dispatch of the Justice League of America and commandeer an experimental spacecraft that flies towards Earth to stage revenge against one per Dagaton, Breen, and we're going to hear that name a lot. Then we see the Justice Society of America appear in an emerald bubble in the dimensional prison. They and the Justice League of America left the crime syndicate years earlier. Starman and Dr. Fate actually were able to free the team, and Green Lantern discovers the crime syndicate, their escape route, how they were able to leave, and they escape back to Earth Prime. Horrified, they discover New York is destroyed by a nuclear blast when they arrive, and Perdagaton is responsible, Bream. What?
Well, we'll find out how it got to that point, because right now we're just in the setup stage of the story. And because they go there, they arrive in 1982. So in current year, because there's a lot of time jumping in the story. Yeah, and the Earth has been devastated. And they have to find out why, and if there's anything they can do about it.
Yeah.
So we hadn't seen the crime syndicate for quite a while up to this point, Breed. They've been in space prison.
Well, I think that this story forgets that they use the crime syndicate and secret society as supervillains.
Yeah,
because I think that the prism they're in, I don't know if they were put in that as a result of something that happened in that storyline, or if they're referring to the original appearance back in Justice League 29 and 30. Now, Conway wrote Secret Society, some of those issues, so I'm assuming I just missed something, and maybe they're referring to that. But either way, it had been several years.
Yeah, I think it had been 3 years at that point when I think Crime Syndicate had been put away.
Yeah.
Getting back to our story, on Earth 1, Superman awakens, and he finds himself plummeting towards the Earth. And he discovers Zatanna and returns her to the satellite up on the Justice League headquarters. Hawkman detects the missing shuttlecraft, so we're getting caught up with our heroes here that were beaten up by the crime syndicate, and they need to find the Justice Society before they can pursue the crime syndicate themselves, Joe Corallo. And they teleport to Earth 2 and discover the JSA headquarters has been abandoned for years. And the calendar reads 1942 in July, obviously indicating that no one has been in the HQ for quite some time. For 5 years, I believe. Outside, they discover a fascist city-state with a black D flags flying all over the place, and statues of Perdagaton. Everything looks like it's from the 40s, but Times Square billboard reads October 2nd, 1982, so I was wrong. It's actually been 40 years. An old lady yells for the police, and they open fire on the Justice League of America with submachine guns. The Justice League retreat back to the Justice Society headquarters. Superman flies the team back to January 1942 because he could time travel himself to discover what happened. And when they open the doors, the All-Star Squadron, not the JSA, actually arrive. And the All-Star Squadron don't even recognize the JL. Joe Corallo?
Yeah, and speaking of with Dagaton and having the flags there and everything, the statues, making it a point to be like, it still looks like it's the 40s, but it's the present day. I feel like this is probably Gerry Conway making some sort of commentary about Cuba, or using Cuba as an example, because Cuba was famously not updating. They were still driving old cars, things like that. So I would imagine that's what Gerry Conway was going for there.
And Joe, this is all playing off on things that are happening in the culture. I imagine you probably remember this too. When I was at school, maybe a little bit after this, like 3 times a year, we had to do nuclear fallout drills. And you get under your desk as if that was going to save you. And the threat of like the nuclear war, obviously the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Cold War was looming over everybody in America. So this is really playing a lot on the tensions and fears of American culture at the time.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, I'm sure I soiled my diapers in fear many a time.
Yeah, but
I was 4 months old or 5 months old at the time, but
yeah, but no, it's really interesting. Like Conway does like touching on these topics. Like we had mentioned before with the Superman, Wonder Woman. Obviously, that deals with the ramifications of pursuing nuclear power and nuclear weapons, things like that. So that's a theme that Gerry likes to go back to. But yeah, I mean, this also got to point out, Romeo Tankal, I might be butchering his name, but as the inker on this story over Don Heck, he inked a lot of George Pérez as well, which goes to show you the importance of inkers, because you look at this and it does look like it has a similar kind of vibrancy to Teen Titans, which he was inking around this time. So again, inkers are important to telling a great story in comics. If anyone's out there who makes comics with a large publisher, inkers are very important, and this is a good example of that. But also, just again, the pacing. This is the splash page, 3 pages in. The Crime Syndicate is coming out, swinging against the League here. So it's a really, really amped up story, full of fighting, which is fitting, as this is the 20th annual team up of the Justice League and the Justice Society.
Very nice. So that's going to get us over to All-Star Squadron 14. So, Breen, what we're going to get from Roy Thomas and Adrian Gonzalez are a few, maybe not completely answers, but they're going to start telling you exactly how this happened, because we arrive in Earth 2, 1947, and we see that Per Dagaton goes to Professor Z's lab and shoots him. He was the assistant of Professor Z at the time, steals his time machine, and goes shopping for futuristic weapons in 1982, which I find to be hilarious. He is accidentally sent from Earth 2 back to Earth Prime, and Dagaton learns in this world his enemies, Hawkman, Wonder Woman, Superman, are nothing but comic book characters, which I find also to be hilarious. The time machine is pulled along by a powerful chronomagnetic attraction in hyperspace, and he finds the Green Lantern power bubble that imprisons the Crime Syndicate. He actually penetrates the bubble, and he and the Crime Syndicate travel through time, space, and dimensions to Earth Prime, October 1962, to Castro's Cuba. They steal dozens of Soviet ICBMs, and Dagaton time shifts them to Earth 2, January 1942, and the Syndicate decides to turn against Dagaton, but he is no fool, Braid. He anticipated this, and there's a preset failsafe device triggered, hurling all 5 of the Crime Syndicate instantly into another dimension, hence the reason that they showed up, when we were supposed to see the Justice Society arriving, and they emerge into Earth 1, October 1982, and immediately attack the Justice League, Braid. I like it. We're getting some answers almost immediately to a much bigger problem, but I like the way it's paced.
Yeah, Per Dagaton killed the professor this time because this has happened to him before, and he knew that he had failed before, so he wasn't going to take any chances this time. So he, decides to get rid of that threat. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in this book.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
We find out, where he's going to get what he's going to use in different timelines, because he does say something at one point. He goes, "I don't care how many Earths I destroy as long as I rule the one that's left," which is important because there's a lot of Earths in play here, a lot of timelines, and I like the way he began the issue too, with his fantasy of having the Justice Society kill each other for his amusement, and then we find out on page 3 that he was dreaming that.
Yeah, it's good. That's like an arcade type thing. I like it.
Alan Moore would just lift that for what was it, the for the man who has everything with Mongol, trapped in the dream.
Yes.
Yeah. Very well done, sir. So we get back to Earth 2 in January 1942. The All-Star Squadron first encounter with Nuclear, the magnetic marauder. And Johnny Quick engages him and causes him to drop his metal loot. Firebrand melts him into slag before they hit the street below. And Nuclear is defeating Johnny Quick. The rest of the All-Star Squadron scramble up the roof to join the fight. Quick, Robot Man, and Steel team up to use a steel cable and their own metallic bodies to stop Nuclear. But they all end up falling in the process. The magnetic marauders escapes through a brick wall, while Robot Man and Steel are lucky to catch a stout flagpole with their cable. And we end up seeing the team head to JSA headquarters for a meeting. And inside, they encounter Aquaman, Firestorm, Hawkman, Superman, and Zatanna, most of whom they do not recognize. And two of them seem to be imposters, Joe Corralo. What the hell's going on here?
There's a lot to keep track here, but some things that I realize should also mention, since there may be a lot of people who aren't familiar watching this with some of these characters. This is not the Cliff Steele Robot Man. This is the Robert Crane Golden Age Robot Man. So just to clear that up. And also, Nuclear, the Magnetic Marauder, is another Golden Age villain. A Golden Age Wonder Woman villain who was like a kind of a one-off that they just brought back here.
Such a good name. Why wouldn't you just stay with it? You know what I mean?
Right.
The Magnetic Marauder. That's
all Bob Kanigher, baby. Yeah. He's he came up with a lot of good stuff. But yeah, but there's a lot of that stuff. There's all of these crossovers with the Justice Society. They're always tipping their hat to some of the golden or early Silver Age stuff, and this story does a lot of that. A lot of little Easter eggs throughout the story. So,
all right, let's pop back over to the Justice League of America number 208. Once again, Gerry Conway, Don Heck. On Earth 2 in January 1942, Eric Breen, All-Star Squadron are surprised to find the Justice League visiting from a future decade in a parallel world. An unnecessary fight ensues, but Superman and Robot Man end up talking some sense into the rest of the teams. And then we see President Roosevelt, and they are all soon ushered into the White House. It seems that the president has received a piece of electronic equipment that morning, and there's a note in the crate that tells them to use the equipment to receive a special broadcast message. And that's when we see it, Breed. Per Dagaton appears and claims to be addressing basically all the world leaders at the exact same time. And Dagaton says he's got nuke-tipped ICBMs, and he plans to have a demonstration with the Breed. My goodness.
Yeah, where could he have gotten them?
That's mysterious.
And he makes it a point that it's not just the Allies, it's the Axis. He doesn't care. He's going to blow them all up if they don't cede control of the Earth to him. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that I think and this is the difference between comics in these days versus comics today. Gerry Conway was clearly no fan of the current president. He was, however, a huge fan of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I think he kind of self-inserts that into Zatanna, who is just starstruck by him. And again, like I said, it's just a little more subtle in those days. But yeah, Dagaton makes his threat, and it really chills FDR because he's it kind of becomes the question of, would he ever use those if he were forced to? Another little subtlety of this story. So yeah, they so the threat's made, and then we're off to Earth Prime.
Absolutely, yeah. Corralo. We're on Earth Prime, October 1982. So when this was written, it would have been present day. Justice Society encounters hostile mutated humanoids looking for a fight in a subway tunnel. And Dr. Fate ends up ending the fight by activating lights, and that does not work well for these dudes in the tunnel. Green Lantern's ring continues to lead the team to an old blind hermit who has lived there and is surrounded by old style and useless television sets ever since the bombs fell. Dr. Fate absorbs the man's memories and projects them into a TV set. And then we see in October 1962, President Kennedy broadcasts a message about the Cuban Missile Crisis. With an added twist, Corralo, the ICBMs have been stolen by superpowered parties. Chairman Khrushchev and President Kennedy call each other's bluff, and a civilization-destroying exchange of nuclear weapons occurs, killing about 1/3 of the world's 3 billion people, and the remaining population, Breen, are essentially mutated and become savage. So now we see how we got to these crazy times.
Yeah, and this was his take on Cold War paranoia, the great what if, or what could have happened. And like I said, I can only imagine what it would have been like in 1962 for those 13 days. I got to imagine it was terrifying. because this could have happened, and that's how it played out. When Perdegaton stole the missiles, Kennedy blamed Khrushchev blamed Kennedy, and then I said when Kennedy presses the button, I mean, it's just like, it really makes you think. So that was my favorite part of the story. It's very believable that he would be pushed to that point, because a lot of people, if I remember history correctly, were really afraid that he was going to be the one to do that.
Yes, we were literally on the brink. There's another time that's much less well publicized. We were actually even closer, but that's a story for another day. What do you think about this, Carlo? This thing is it's quite exciting.
Oh yeah, no, there is so much action in each issue, while also taking the time to like explain what's happening. But they're able to, like Conway and Roy Thomas, because in the credits for each issue, the other writer is a consultant on that issue. So clearly they were communicating and to make the book as tight as possible. And yeah, you see through the explanations and everything, we get to see action. We see everything going on. It's not, one issue that's, Kennedy pacing around and having conversations with people about
giving
whether or not he should.
For 6 pages,
yeah,
explaining everything. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and Perdegaton is really just this ruthless, threatening villain. And like you said, he gets these great lines, about not caring how many Earths get destroyed, even if there's one left, if he's the ruler, and his like stormtrooper type minions. He's really threatening in this, despite not being a like celestial being of beyond enormous power. He's not some sort of great darkness. He's not some planet eating nightmare. It's you can actually tell these kind of stories without that. Mm-hmm.
If Napoleon had been a supervillain.
Yeah, basically.
Absolutely.
So we go back to Earth Prime, October 1982. Green Lantern and Dr. Fate start comparing notes, and they're both alerted to a persona echo of a man involved in the catastrophes named Perdegaton. So they're starting to get onto him. And then we see on Earth 2, January 1942, All-Star Squadron and Justice League stand by to observe Dagaton's demonstration. And we see Aquaman kind of patrolling the oceans, warding sea life to flee. And then an ICBM dives into the area and detonates. Zatanna shields the surface vessels from the destructive effects. And then we see a transparent flying bubble appears out of the center of the blast zone, carrying 5 unconscious JSA members. And then we have the All-Star Squadron, Justice League, and JSA assemble to work on a plan. So we're finally getting all the heroes together here, Breed.
Yeah, and something that I like, another thing that I really like in the story is, I don't remember which JSA or All-Star Squadron member says it. We were talking about when the missiles launched. They go, at this distance, it can't be much worse than a firecracker at a 4th of July festival, because they don't know. They have no idea. I said, obviously, the heroes from today saw how World War II ended. They know what these things can do or what they would eventually be able to do. But the heroes of 1942 had no concept. And that's why they're like so shocked when it does what it does, and that someone has to protect them from basically being wiped out. So I thought that was another nice little touch to, contrast between the two eras.
That is important. And another thing I should also mention is this young up-and-comer Jerry Ordway is the inker on these All-Star Squadron comics. It's always interesting seeing this kind of stuff. Yeah, because I think Dan Jurgens was starting to ink some of the Batman titles around this point too. So seeing people like, Ordway and Jurgens like early on, like doing that kind of work, it's cool.
Absolutely. Let's get over to All-Star Squadron 15. Once again, Roy Thomas, Adrian Gonzalez. And on Earth 2 in January 1942, Perdegaton gets news that the Justice Society is coming after him. from 40 years in the future. This is such a good story. But it doesn't faze him at all, Crow. It's as if he knows everything that's going to happen. Degaton observes the U.S. battleship carrying the Justice League All-Star Squadron in Justice Society of America. And sensors reveal that 5 of them are actually from a future decade of a parallel world. Dr. Fate and Zatanna used their magic to kind of clean up the radioactive contamination from the blast that happened. And the heroes return to the White House and report to President Roosevelt. Degaton transmits a new warning to FDR, Churchill, Hitler, Stalin, Tojo, Crow, and he says he's now the dictator of the world, or else. And then the Roosevelt gives the justice, teams that have gotten together 5 hours to save the day, and then they start, kind of forming like little teams to go work on individual problems. But essentially, FDR is going to give up if they can't do it in 5 hours.
Yeah, the way they're trying to depict Roosevelt here is that the human life is too important, and he would rather, like, there is hope in life, basically, and that if he would rather resign and have there be a chance that people overthrow, Degaton than to allow Degaton to wipe out the world. So, it's an interesting approach, and they've got 5 hours. So
and it gives them the countdown clock. It amps up the tension, right?
Absolutely, and this is where I think even if you're a little younger reading this, I think I think we're about to see some people fight the crime syndicate. So, and you don't have to wait that long.
No, we get right into it. We start seeing them break up into little teams. This is the fun part when you get to see these characters that have probably never fought side by side to finally go out there and do some things together. So, Breen, we see Dr. Fate, Robot Man, and Superman fly into Earth's orbit and start ripping Degaton's satellite apart. Unfortunately, they hit a kryptonite booby trap, and that takes out Superman almost instantaneously. And then they are attacked by Ultraman, who punches Dr. Fate out and disassembles Robot Man. Well, not fully disassembles, but he takes him apart enough, and then he flings him towards Earth. Then we see Dr. Fate and Superman actually rally, and Ultraman is punched into outer space. Absolutely fantastic. And at that point, we see Aquaman, Liberty Bell, and Starman fly a few hundred miles south of Japan, where there's a high concentration of radiation. The trail leads them down into a cave to an underground missile base manned by Degaton troopers and Superwoman. Oh, my goodness. Who then almost immediately knocks out Starman, and it looks like Liberty Bell is unconscious as well. And Superwoman is ready to kill these two heroes. And then Aquaman and some blue whales smash their way into the underground base, and Starman is able to fly them and Superwoman to safety.
Couple of things. Ultraman's not very smart.
No.
Because if he just held on to the kryptonite, Superman doesn't recover to belt him into his next appearance in whatever comic that was. Now, Superwoman is a little smarter, because when it's brought up to her, I said, if you use the rod, you might set off the explosives and you're toast too. And then she goes, all right, I'll just break your neck. But it also gives, Aquaman time to bring out the really big guns and save that part of the day.
Yeah, this is what people came to the party for. This is why you read the previous 3 issues, Breed, is to finally see all these heroes together and start kicking butt.
Well, you also, like I said, it is the plot is very complicated, but at its core, this is a superhero comic. So at some point, you better get some bad guys and good guys punching each other, and that's what this issue gave us.
Absolutely, the smile on my face when this one's over, it was hurting my little cheekbones.
The whale was smiling too, if you look.
All right, Corralo. We get Hawkman, Huntress, and Johnny Quick crisscrossing the central of the United States in search of high levels of radiation in the Midwest when they are attacked by the Power Ring. Excuse me. Who has already treacherously mowed down all the Degaton henchmen because he cannot be trusted. He easily ensnares Quick and Hawkman into his ring energy, and then Huntress knocks him out with a batarang. Before he falls, Power Ring actually manages to launch one of the ICBMs, and then Hawkman kind of launches Johnny Quick himself onto it, and he rapidly disassembles the missile, and Johnny Quick manages to dismantle the remaining unlaunched missiles. And Degaton, he's seeing this now, Corallo. He's not so cool anymore because he's throwing an absolute fit like a little baby. Yeah, but he's got a final ace up his sleeve. And he says, Corallo, by the end of the day, Degaton, he will have conquered the Earth, or there will be no Earths left to conquer.
Yes, and also for some people, again, I don't know. Some people are probably coming into this cold or a little unfamiliar. This is the Earth 2 Huntress, who's the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. And Batman had already been killed by Joe Staton at this point. I think it was for... I know they killed him as a gift to Joe Orlando. I believe it was like an anniversary or something like that. So they were basically like, well, Joe, we can't kill every Batman, but we can kill this one for you. So that's what they did for Joe Orlando. So it's very nice of them.
Very, very good stuff. That will bring us into the last chapter of our tale, Justice League of America 209. Gerry Conway, Don Heck finishing up this story. Corallo, we see at the White House in January 1942 on Earth 2, the heroes arrive at the White House. And so far, 24 of the 27 ICBMs that were stolen from Cuba in 1962 are accounted for. And then in Geneva, Switzerland, Commander Steele, Firestorm, and Power Girl fly, and the local mayor kind of flips out when they land, and they are suddenly bombarded by machine gun fire, which is bouncing off of Steele. It kind of knocks him down. Power Girl and Firestorm end up handling Degaton commandos with their futuristic weapons from 1982. And Power Girl from Earth 2 is ambushed by Johnny Quick from Earth 3. They fight, and Quick wins enough, kind of. He escapes. And Firestorm flies into a clock tower where they've kind of discovered that's where the launch room is. And he finds the control room as Johnny Quick from Earth 3 is turning against his Degaton allies. And then one Degaton trooper is able to hit the launch switch before they defeat him. And Quick attempts to flee, but Firestorm catches him just as the missile takes off. The heroes neutralize the remaining missiles and return to the White House. And we see that Superman pinpoints the headquarters at the future side of the Pentagon building. And Dr. Fate is concerned about creating time paradoxes. Well, it's about time he was concerned about that. They've only been doing it for 4 or 5 issues, Joe.
Yes, but the clock is ticking, which you can also tell a little bit from the art. Don Heck is not being inked at this point. It shows a little bit. You can tell it's a little, but still a lot of great fun. I absolutely love the crime syndicate Johnny Quick, not the other Johnny Quick in this story.
It does get a little confusing.
Who is just like vibrating inside a statue to leap out and catch Power Girl by surprise. But yeah, that whole bit, it's just wonderful stuff all around. Dealing with these, taking everything out, it's really coming down to the wire. There's some nice timed moments going back to FDR to add to the tension of like, oh, we got this one, but there's still more, and it's all leading up to getting those last missiles, but there's some little bit of time shenanigans involved in that, which I believe you're going to get to shortly about the because it's a different. They're arriving earlier than it's time travel.
That's exactly what's happening. So Breen, we got Professor Z and Everson are meeting with Firebrand, Green Lantern, and Zatanna, and Lantern tells Z per Degaton is going to get his hands on Z's time machine after he kills him, and he's going to use it to murder millions of people. And then Z shows them his unfinished prototype time machine, which, why would he think it was ever going to do anything? It doesn't look like it'll work. But thankfully, Green Lantern, I think Zatanna get it working with no trouble. The 3 time-displaced superheroes are sent from 1942 to Cuba 1962 on Earth Prime, and they observe the ICBMs being dismantled and shipped to Havana Harbor, which is how it happened in the history that Alan and Z remember. And the crime syndicate arrives. Green Lantern stuns the Ultraman and Superwoman. Zatanna crashes Johnny Quick into Owlman, and Green Lantern out Willpower's Power Ring. And for basically a final victory there, Braden, they kind of whoop their butts.
Yeah, and they're just stopping Degatons all over the place.
There are a lot of them.
Because he's going to run away to start again, or so he thinks. Runs into Satana, and I said, now you got Degatons dropping all over the place.
He earned it, Brain. He deserved it. He destroyed 3 Earths just so he could rule one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously it worked. Everything reset, and he's the bumbling assistant again.
That's essentially what happens when we go back to Northern Virginia, 1942 on Earth 2, and the heroes are flying to attack Dagaton's secret HQ, and they end up running all over Dagaton's troops. They capture Dagaton himself. Zatanna intercepts him as he tries to escape back to the time machine, and then Green Lantern and Zatanna send the crime syndicate back to their proper time and place because they need to be in prison. And then we see history start to reshape itself, Joe Corallo, as we return back to normal. 1942 on Earth 2, Dagaton disappears, and all the good guys disappear, and they're already forgetting what they've seen and what happened. In New York City, 1942 on Earth 2, Commander Steel, Firebrand, Johnny Quick, Liberty Bell, and Robot Man are at the front door of the Justice Society headquarters. In New York in 1947 on Earth 2, Per Dagaton and Malachi Lee have a familiar conversation. Outside of time and space between dimensions, the crime syndicate sit very quietly in their green sphere prison thing that they're in. And in the Justice League of America satellite 1982 over Earth 1, the Transmatter Cube activates and brings Dr. Fate, Green Lantern, the Huntress, Power Girl, and Starman over from Earth 2, just like it was supposed to happen. And no one remembers any of this multiversal crisis, Joe Corral. It's like it never happened.
No, and it's there's a few things that to give you a little hints at, like Huntress didn't get to ask Superman that question. Will we ever find out what the Huntress wanted? Does it matter? Because Crisis is in a few years. Who can say? Does Crisis even matter anymore? But you have that going on. A little bit of a sinister look at Degaton there. Like maybe even though he's just a lowly assistant again. Yeah. If everything's been forgotten, he's going to go at it again. The crime syndicate's trapped, but they're still out there. So, it's they've won, but for how long? It's that kind of thing.
You know what I like about this, Brain, is you get all this stuff, and it feels big and it feels important. But when it's over, it kind of goes back to the way it was. You got this really fun adventure, but at the end, not everything has been destroyed and dismantled or whatever, and you get to continue on with your story.
The important takeaway from this is there was 5 issues of interruptions between Firestorm hitting on Power Girl.
Well, that's not cool. She needs to say yes.
Well, I said she does ask him to hold her at the end of the story.
That's the ending we all deserved and needed.
Because she can't shake the feeling that she just escaped a great disaster.
Yeah.
I will definitely this is highest recommend kind of stuff. You're not going to find stories this fun, told this briskly paced. This feels like it would take a couple years in today's comic books just to get through it. I know that I think there's only one place you can get this story collected, Corallo, if you can't get the back issues. Yes. Crisis on Multiple Earths. I think it's volume number 6.
Yeah.
Yep.
Volume number 6 is where you can get it. If you go and you get the All-Star Squadron, I don't think it's an omnibus, but there's one with these stories in it. You won't get the Justice League stuff in it, so you won't get the full story. If you want this, you got to go to Crisis on Multiple Earths, or you have to go get the original issues. I say do either one if you got the time and you got the means to do it, because this is why we read comic books, Joe Corallo, for fun, great stories with wonderful superheroes. Absolutely,
it's why you read comics. It's also why people read stuff like DC Comics, because even though it's a lot of Marvel people working on this, it's got that DC feel because it's tapping into all of the rich history going back decades before even Marvel existed. We're tapping into the World War II stuff, all that, and it's just very. It has that nice blend of DC and Marvel type comics in one story. So absolutely recommend.
What are your thoughts, Braid, as we wrap this bad boy up?
Well, Joe, you'd referenced the Superman Wonder Woman story that Conway did. It was about 5 years before this. It made you realize in those 5 years, DC was starting to finally grow up.
Yeah.
And this was a pretty ambitious story for DC. I mean, Marvel had been doing stuff like this for years.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, I said, if they'd arrived at this conclusion, like put more guys like Marv Wolfman on Action Comics and more stuff like All-Star Squadron and this story, maybe a crisis might not have been necessary 3 years later. But I guess by that time maybe it was inevitable.
Yeah.
But this really did feel like a Marvel story with DC history attached to it.
Yeah.
And like I said, this was a great read.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I feel terrible. I forget the viewer that asked for this, but thank you very much, because this is a fantastic read. It's a ton of fun. We will be back next time. What are we reviewing this next time? Joe, we're doing Avengers? Are we talking about Kang?
We're going to have the Avengers are going to be duking it out with Kang the Conqueror in Avengers 8, 11, 23, and 24.
Yeah, so if you would like to follow along, or you want to be prepared for the next comic book retrospective next weekend, definitely go read up on those, and we will see you then.